All right, good morning. Good morning. Happy Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day. All right. So, what am I talking about today? Brian. Oh, sorry, he's centering the camera. Yes, that's very important for those online. Hello, online people who are watching this at some point. So the month of May, we're talking about compassion. And my topic, Jyoti and I are given a list of all the topics that we could potentially speak on from home office. And it's up to us whether or not we choose to speak on those. So sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. And the topic today, or this week, was cause and effect. Great topic, terrible title. So I changed it to the path to freedom. Yeah. Because once we understand the law of cause and effect and how to use it in our life and how to operate it, how to work with it, freedom is possible. Yeah. So the law of cause and effect is a well-known universal law. We've all are probably familiar with it, heard of it at some point. My mic is doing weird things, Brian. Maybe it's too close to my mouth. It's probably not anything you're doing. It's probably user error over here. Okay, let's try that. So it's a well-known universal law. The Buddhist tradition, they talk about cause and effect, that whatever we put out comes back to us. And so in other words, if we harm somebody in this life, the next life, we're going to come back as a dung beetle. No, next life. Next life we're going to come back and it's going to harm us. It's going to return to us. It's called the law of karma, okay? And Ernest Holmes, he talked about karma. He did talk about it. But he mostly talked about the law of cause and effect, and that really it's about, it's the same thing. As we give, we receive. As we put out, it comes back to us. Action and reaction, right? That's really what it's about. And he said this about the law of cause and effect. If we talk about discord, we shall become more discordant. The more the world arms for more, the more certain it is that there will be war. People who spend all their time talking about their unhappiness become more unhappy. Makes sense, yes? Yeah. And so, what we focus on expands. We focus on something positive, that returns to us. We focus on something negative, that comes back to us. Pretty simple. But I want to talk about something else related to this particular universal law that I think is really important for us to be aware of. Not every experience that we have is related to our thoughts, related to our beliefs, our attitudes, our feelings. And the reason I say that is because as spiritual seekers, as spiritual beings, when we learn a universal law like this, we work so hard to do it perfectly. Well, I got to watch my thoughts. I got to watch my beliefs. I got to watch everything I do so that it brings me joy in my life. I want to make sure everything I'm putting out there is positive and good and working so that it all comes back to me. But there are things in life that don't have a direct cause. There's a mystery to some things that happen in life. I have a dear friend at work who recently lost her mother about 3 weeks ago. They referred to her as the mother bear, Mama Bear, because she was the rock and the strength of that family, and it devastated the family. She was only 59 years old. So today's a particularly hard day for them, as you can imagine. Now, would you say that, and she died of cancer, so would you say that her thoughts contributed to her having cancer? To her death? Not necessarily, possibly. But can we always say that every single thing that happens to us is related to our thoughts? Can we say that an 8-month-old child that develops a terminal illness and dies is related to that child's thoughts? No, absolutely not. So now I'm not saying that there isn't a mind-body connection. There is absolutely a mind-body connection. It has been proven. Research has shown that. But we just want to be careful with this one. This is a tricky one. The universal laws are fantastic. And when we understand them and we use them, they can bring tremendous peace and joy and happiness to our lives. But we also want to be aware of how we how we are using them and how they are impacting us. Because it can also be really damaging. We start to watch our thoughts so closely. We start to watch everything we're doing so closely. As spiritual seekers, we want to do it right. I got to watch my thoughts. I got to pay attention to this. I got to pay attention to that. And then we become a little paranoid about what we're doing. And we start to, the brain wants to compartmentalize. The brain wants to analyze. It wants to figure things out. Well, why did that happen in my life? Why did that thing show up in my life? Why did I experience that? Why, right? And why did I attract that? That's a very common question in spiritual circles. Anybody said that to yourself? Why did I attract that? Right? And we're not, and then when we realize perhaps why it showed up, we're not really gentle and kind and loving with ourselves. Oh, now I understand why I said that. Oh, I need to be aware of that. Instead, it's like, why did I do that? Why did I let that happen? So we can be harsh about it. And when we have that kind of energy around it, how does that make us feel? Not so good. Not so good. It's not the most loving way that we can approach ourselves, right? Or think about ourselves. And the ego loves that. So the moment that we are judging ourselves, the moment that we are saying those harsh things to ourselves, the ego loves that. The ego is all about complaining, beating ourselves up, making ourselves feel bad about ourselves. The ego has a field day. It has like a dance party. It's like, yeah, let's do this. Yeah, and once the ego starts to get involved in it, we start to spiral. We start to spiral downwards. And we say things like, gosh, I've been holding on to this thing for the last 25 years. Why haven't I let that go yet? Why haven't I let that go? Why haven't I shifted that yet? Can anybody relate to this? Y'all, yeah. We ask those questions, and whenever we ask the question with why, that right there starts a spiral of judgment, of self-judgment, of harsh words towards ourselves. It's not supportive. So the law of cause and effect is not meant to make us feel bad about who we are. That's not what it's intended to do. It's intended to help us become more aware of who we are, become more aware of how this law operates and how it's showing up. But it's not meant to create this harsh energy, this negative energy towards ourselves. We've taken the law of cause and effect and we've turned it into something that can oftentimes create more fear, actually, than joy and happiness in our life. And so what if we instead, when we notice that we have a thought, we have a belief, we have something that we're holding, that we're noticing, we're repeating it over and over and over again. What if instead of trying to shift it immediately, that we allow ourselves to be in that thought, be in that statement, whatever statement we're holding about ourselves, whatever thought or belief or attitude, and for a moment we just, let me just feel this for a second. Let me just allow this in. There's a wonderful form of meditation called Vipassana. And I'm going to be teaching a 6-week meditation class at the end of June. And we're going to be talking about lots of different types of meditation, and this is one of them. Vipassana it's a type of meditation where you're sitting in meditation, and as you have a thought that comes in, you just notice it. You just notice it, and as you notice it and you allow it, it shifts and it moves on magically. You're sitting there in meditation and your leg starts to hurt or your back. You just notice it. You allow it to be there. And magically, it shifts. It shifts. And why does this happen? It happens because there's no resistance. There's absolutely no resistance in that moment. You're not labeling it. You're not judging it. You're not analyzing it. You're not asking why. Why do I have this thought? Why does my back hurt? Why does my leg hurt? You're just allowing it. You're just allowing it. And so what if we did that with our thoughts? What if we did that with our beliefs? Those moments when we're feeling frustration, or we're feeling anger, or we're feeling fear. And we just let ourselves just feel it. What's the effect if we just let it be? The effect that is possible for us? Peace, calming energy, acceptance, freedom. Freedom is possible. Can you see that? Now, it doesn't mean that if we're in the midst of something, like my dear friend is going through such incredible grief right now over the loss of her mother, it doesn't mean that you can shift something just like that. Oh, I'm just going to allow the grief to be there and I'll shift it and I'll move on. That's not what I'm saying. But what it does when we allow something in and we really let ourselves feel it is that it shifts to loving ourselves and having more compassion for ourselves, a little bit more than perhaps we did prior to that. It's such a loving and compassionate thing that we can do for ourselves. Yeah. I have an example of this in my own life. You all know I like to tell my own stories here. So the other day I was sitting in my office. It was during lunch. Had my door closed, as I often do. And all of a sudden I was filled with fear. Now it wasn't like it just came out of nowhere. I think it'd been building all day. But suddenly it just culminated in this moment. And I was filled with some fear around some financial stuff that I'm dealing with right now. And I watched myself spiral. I could feel it. It was like one thought led to another, connected to another. Pretty soon, I got to move out of the state because it's too expensive here. I got to leave Colorado. I got to go somewhere else. I got to change my job. I got to, and it happened so fast. Suddenly, I was thinking I needed to move. I'm not going anywhere, but that was right? That was what happened in that moment. And I caught myself. Can anybody relate to this? Fear, right? Fear is one of those things where before you know it, worst case scenario. That's where we go. And with it 0 to 100, we're like worst case. And so I was sitting there and I'm feeling it, and I could feel it in my body, and my body was getting really, really anxious. I mean, I could feel my whole body vibrating with this fear. And so I closed my eyes, and I took a breath, and I let myself feel the fear. Just feel it. Just feel the fear. So I wasn't pushing it away. I wasn't judging it. I wasn't labeling it. I was just allowing it. And wouldn't you know, as soon as I did that, it shifted. And once it shifted and the anxiousness melted away, I could then move into faith. I could then move into a place of total faith that I got this. God's got this. And freedom was possible for me in that moment. So I want you to right now to think of something some fear that you have. Some fear that kind of gets a grip at you. Maybe there's something in your life right now. For some, as you think about the end of your life, you're thinking about the aging process. You're thinking about financially, how am I going to make this work as I move forward in my life, towards the end of my life? For others of you, it might be some other challenge or some other fear that you're holding. So I want you to just close your eyes for a moment, and I want you to just let yourself just bring that feeling of fear, just let yourself feel it. And you're not labeling it, you're not judging it, you're not pushing it away. You're just allowing it. And just breathe through that and let yourself feel it. Noticing it. Just noticing. Noticing where it's showing up in your body. And just surrounding it with your breath, surrounding it with some light, some love. Okay, opening your eyes. So, what we do with the law and cause and effect, what we do with it is we have a thought of fear, for example, that we have a hard time with. And we think that if we hold it, that it's going to manifest something negative in our life. And so immediately we want to stop it and push it away. Immediately we say, no, I don't want that. And as soon as we shift it with that kind of energy, boom. If a little child came to you and they were stressed about every day on the playground, the children don't come to them. Mommy, every day on the playground, kids won't come up to me. Would you say to your child, you know what, you got to drop that story? I would hope not. You got to drop that story. You got to stop focusing on that's going to happen, because now that's going to happen to you. We would never say that to a child. Why do we say that to ourselves? So in those moments when you're feeling whatever it is, fear, we just did that on fear, that example on fear, holding it like you're holding this beautiful part of yourself and surrounding it with love and holding it with love, just like you would a little child. I heard a spiritual teacher recently say that everyone in the world is allowed to make mistakes except those of us on a spiritual path. Right? Isn't that true? Yeah. It's like we think that we have to have all these universal laws all worked out. We do them perfectly. We don't ever say anything negative. We don't do anything negative. We don't ever go into fear. We got it all together. That's just ridiculous. Right? You know, truthfully, these are all opportunities to cultivate more love for ourselves and to cultivate more faith, more trust. That is why we're here. That's what I believe, why we're here. So when we get stuck on something, it's like, interesting. Let me tune into that. Let me check out what's, in a loving way. In a loving way. You know, we're so harsh sometimes that, you know, we're working through something and having an emotional meltdown about something. I'm going to give myself only an hour to be sad about this, and then I'm moving on. Why do we do that? Maybe we need 3 weeks. Maybe we need a whole day. That's okay. That's okay. It's such a loving thing to do to ourselves, for ourselves. To just let ourselves feel whatever is coming up. And as we let ourselves and as we allow it, it shifts on its own. It shifts on its own in its own timing. In its own timing, because there's a difference between focusing on something and noticing something. Do you see the difference? Focusing, the fear, I got to move out of the state, I need to make more money, I got to find a new job, focus. Noticing, isn't that interesting? Let me be with that. Allowing, and that's what creates freedom for us. That's what creates true freedom. You know, because everything is part of the divine. Every thought, every belief, every negative thought, every action, reaction, all of it is the divine. Every single aspect of it is part of God. We don't always recognize that in the moment, but it is. We didn't come here to suffer. We didn't come here to experience one tragedy and loss after another, and a difficult time and a challenging time over and over and over again. That's not why we're here. We're here, we're given opportunities daily to reacquaint ourselves with the beauty of the grace of God that is within us. That is why we're here. And so we find ourselves ruminating on these thoughts. It's an opportunity. It's another opportunity to just be with and allow and ask it, what is it here to show me? What are you, this thought keeps coming up. What is it? This emotion, this feeling, this belief, this attitude. What is it here to show me about myself? That's such a better way, or I hate to say better as if there's good and bad, but it's just such a more loving way of being with ourselves. So surrounding ourselves and our thoughts with love. And not be so quick to say, I'm having this thought, I got to shift it. Because if I don't, this is going to happen. So just be aware of that. Be aware of those times when we're so quick to do that. And giving yourself the permission to just be with and allow it in. So let's say our affirmation one more time together. As I allow myself to be with what I'm feeling, freedom is possible in my life. So just closing your eyes and just feeling the vibration of that after our discussion, after my talk. As I allow myself to be with what I'm feeling, freedom is possible in my life. And so I just ask that practitioners stand in high consciousness as we move into prayer. And so right here, right now, I just recognize this human walk that all of us are on. Having gratitude for that walk. We are all in this together. And I'm just knowing that as we move through this journey of universal laws and principles, there are times when we get it right and times when we don't, and times when we're spiraling downwards, and it is all good, as it is all God. And those times when we have those emotions, those thoughts, those attitudes, those beliefs, that perhaps we recognize and notice that they're not serving us. That instead of jumping to judgment, instead of jumping to asking why, we instead just allow. That we surround those parts of ourselves with love and light, and we hold that. What a loving gesture that we can make to ourselves. And so I'm knowing that as we go out into the world this week, that we are loving towards ourselves, because that is true freedom. That is the path to freedom. And so I just give thanks for this knowing. I give thanks for the energy of this knowing. Knowing we are blessed by this light, by this love that God is. And so I just say thank you, God, thank you, life. And so it is.
And so it is.